I never thought I'd be that guy, the one posting on a relationship advice forum, but here I am. Maybe it's because I feel like I've been punched in the stomach and I'm trying to make sense of it all. My name's Dave, and I'll tell you straight up, I'm furious. Not just because I found out my wife, Lisa, has been cheating on me, but because it's with her boss. At the Christmas party. Yeah, the one she kept talking about like it was some kind of fairy tale. We've been together 8 years. I poured myself into this relationship, into planning a future. I got a good job, bought the house we always talked about, and I thought we were on the same page. She was my everything, or so I thought. It was a typical Thursday night when I decided to surprise her with dinner. I'd been working late, so I was craving to see her smile. I got home around 7:30, the house quiet, the lights dimmed. The smell of something sweet and floral hit my nose as I stepped inside. I called her name, but no answer. I moved toward the living room, and that's when I saw it. Her phone was on the table, screen lit up with a message from Tom, her boss. It wasn't just a casual hi or a work update. No, it was more flirty, intimate, like they'd been exchanging secrets for months, buried behind a wall of lies. My stomach clenched, my palms went cold. I scrolled through the messages, and sure enough, there were pictures, her in his office, her leaning in close, laughing behind my back like I didn't matter. I couldn't breathe. My heart hammered. I wanted to yell, to hit something, but instead I stood there, staring at the betrayal in those tiny glowing screens. There was more. A calendar invite to a hotel scheduled for last weekend. I cursed myself for not noticing sooner. How could she hide this? How long had she been lying? I remember feeling numb, almost like my body refused to process what I was seeing. I slid the phone into my pocket, my head spinning like a tornado. I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. This wasn't just an affair. It was a complete gut punch to everything I thought we had. I wanted to scream, but the words wouldn't come, just this suffocating silence. Later that night, I sat in the dark, replaying every moment, every sign I might have missed. There was that time she was unusually distant, her phone always face down, her excuses about work stress. I brushed it off because I trusted her. Now I realize how blind I'd been. I kept replaying the messages, trying to find some explanation, some reason why she'd do this. But there was no logical reason that could justify betrayal like that. She'd been hiding it, lying to my face every day, and I'd never suspected a thing. Does that make me stupid or just incredibly naive? When I finally confronted her, she denied everything at first. Denied it even when I handed her the phone, the evidence glaring. Her face went pale, eyes darting around like a cornered animal. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, voice trembling, but I knew better. I could see it in her eyes. She was lying, and I hated her for it. "I don't want to drag this out, but I need you to understand how raw I am right now." My stomach still twists whenever I think about that betrayal. The trust I built, shattered like glass. I feel like I got punched in the gut, no warning, no mercy. And I'm asking myself how I got here, how I let her get away with it so long. I need to figure out what's next. Not just how to handle the anger or heartbreak, but how to make sure I come out of this with some dignity left. Because right now, I feel like I'm just standing in the ruins of what I thought was real. If you've ever been through something like this, you'll know that the worst part isn't the cheating itself. It's the complete erosion of trust, the feeling that the person you loved, the person you trusted most, was hiding a secret so deep they could have been a stranger all along. And honestly, I don't even know who she is anymore. After I found out, everything changed in an instant. I mean, I knew I was angry, but there was this deep, burning part of me that just froze. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, the way she looked when I confronted her, scared, guilty, but still lying through her teeth. It's like her betrayal had seeped into my bones, draining all the trust I had left for her. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling while the house was silent except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. My hands clenched into fists. I kept thinking about all the moments I missed signals, the times I brushed aside her distant mood, or the way she'd sneakily check her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. I started to see the clues that I'd dismissed, the little red flags that I'd told myself were just my paranoia. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I wasn't just dealing with a betrayal. I was dealing with a mess of lies that had slowly been building up for months. I looked at the evidence again, her phone, the messages, the pictures. It was all right there. She'd been hiding this for so long and I had no idea. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let this go on. Not just for me, but for my own sanity. I sat there in the dark, every muscle in my body tense, trying to come up with a plan. I couldn't just blow up and say something reckless. I needed a calculated move. I had to hit her where it hurt, but smart. No screaming, no shouting, just cold, precise revenge. The next day, I didn't sleep much. I spent hours thinking, planning, and collecting evidence. I wanted to make sure I had everything. I went through her phone again, took screenshots of the messages, printed out the pictures. I even managed to find her email account and print a few incriminating exchanges from her work laptop. I needed proof that this wasn't just a one-time thing. It was ongoing, systematic. If I was going down, I was going to do it with clarity. I also reached out to a private investigator I knew from a coworker, just to confirm some details. She'd been leaving her phone around more often lately, acting jumpy whenever I'd get close. I'd seen her make quick calls and hide her screen when I entered the room. Now, I had enough to make her realize I was serious. She couldn't deny everything I had in hand, and I wasn't about to let her spin her way out of this. Once I had the evidence, I sat her down. It was late afternoon and the house was eerily quiet. I knew she'd been avoiding me, but I was done with the games. I looked her straight in the eyes and said, "I know what you've done. I have proof, all of it." Her face went pale again, but this time she didn't deny it. Instead, she stared at me with this wide-eyed, helpless look. Her voice barely came out. "Please, Dave, don't do this. I was stupid. It didn't mean anything." That was the moment I realized I needed more than just to confront her. I needed to plan my revenge, to make her feel the loss the way I was feeling it, the betrayal, the emptiness, the shattered trust. I wouldn't let her get away with this without consequences. She'd hurt me, yes, but I was going to make sure she paid just a little for what she did. Not in violence, no. That's not my style. But in something cold, calculated, and unmistakably effective. I looked at her trembling lips and told her, "You've made your choice. Now I'm making mine." I could feel my jaw tight, the rush of adrenaline making my fists clench harder. I was done being the naive guy who trusted her blindly. From this point on, I'd be the one in control. I'd show her that a man doesn't sit quietly when his world is turned upside down. I planned every detail carefully. The money, the timing, the signals. I knew exactly what I was going to do, and I was ready to act. Because the worst thing I could do now was to let her think she'd gotten away with it. No. I was going to remind her exactly who she was messing with, someone who refused to be broken, someone who would fight back no matter how much it hurt. The question was, how far would I go? That's what I still needed to decide. But one thing was clear: she'd messed with the wrong guy and she'd regret it. I spent the next couple of days meticulously plotting my move. Every detail had to be perfect. I knew I wanted to hit her where it would hurt most, her pride, her sense of security. I also had to be smart about it. No reckless accusations, no shouting matches, just cold, undeniable evidence and a plan that would leave her unable to deny everything. I started by cracking her email account. It wasn't difficult, she wasn't careful enough. I found the hotel booking confirmation, the messages exchanged with her boss, Tom, and even a few deleted emails she thought she'd hidden. I printed everything out. I wanted physical proof I could lay in front of her, no room for her to deny it now. My stomach clenched every time I looked at those papers, remembering how she'd lied so convincingly before. But I knew I had to do more. I had to make her realize she'd lost everything: her reputation, her safety, maybe even her job. I didn't want to just confront her blindly. I wanted her to see that I knew everything, and that I was ready to blow this whole thing wide open. So I reached out to the investigator I'd contacted. He confirmed the affair was ongoing, and he had photos of her with Tom at the hotel, kissing, holding hands, the real deal. I also learned that she'd been planning to meet him again the coming weekend, which gave me a perfect window to execute my plan. On the night I chose, I waited until she was out of the house. My heart hammered in my chest. I moved quickly and quietly, stacking the evidence on the kitchen table. I set a small recording device in the living room, just in case I needed proof later. Then I set the stage. When she got home, I was waiting. She looked surprised, maybe a little nervous. Her eyes darted around, trying to figure out what was going on. I held up the printed emails and photos. "You lied to me," I said calmly, voice steady but icy. "These are the messages between you and Tom. You're planning to meet him again this weekend, aren't you?" She froze, her face draining of color. I don't know what you're talking about," she whispered, but her trembling hands betrayed her. "Oh, come on, don't even bother. I have everything right here." I slammed the papers on the table, watching her flinch. "You've been cheating on me for months. While I was working, planning our future, you were sneaking behind my back with your boss. How long has this been going on? 6 months? A year?" She looked away, tears welling up. "It's not what it looks like. I swear I didn't mean for it to happen." "Bullshit," I cut her off. "You've been lying every step of the way, and I'm done. I want you out of this house. Tonight." She broke down then, crying, begging, saying how sorry she was. But sorry doesn't undo betrayal. Sorry doesn't fix what she broke. I felt this strange mixture of anger and disappointment, like my stomach was twisting into knots. "I want you to leave everything behind," I said coldly. "Your phone, your clothes. You're going to pack your things and get out of my life. And I'm filing for divorce, because I don't want to be married to a liar anymore." Her sobs grew louder, but I was already feeling like I was in motion. I'd planned this carefully. The evidence was clear. She wouldn't be able to spin her way out of it. I handed her a bag and told her to start packing. Watching her pack her things was almost surreal. Part of me wanted to reach out, to scream at her, to make her feel how much she'd hurt me, but I held back. I knew I had to be disciplined. Revenge isn't about losing control, it's about control, about not letting her see how much she'd broken me. When she finally left, I stood in the doorway and watched her walk out with her bag. She looked defeated, broken even. I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with pure rage. I'd taken everything she tried to hide and laid it bare. She'd lost her power, her confidence, her home. And I knew this wasn't the end of it. Not yet. I had one more move to make, a final act that would leave her haunted and helpless. But for now, I just watched her disappear down the street, thinking about all the ways I'd make her regret this. Because the only thing worse than betrayal is being made to feel small for it. And I was about to make sure she did. The silence in the house after she left was deafening. I stood there in the living room, staring at the empty space where she'd just been. All her things were gone, and with them, a part of what I thought was my life. My stomach felt like it was twisting into knots, but I also felt something else, a strange sense of clarity. The anger I'd bottled up was burning hotter than ever. I knew I couldn't just let her go without making her feel the sting of what she'd done. That's when I realized I needed a decisive move, not just to hurt her, but to make sure she understood that I was serious. I wanted her to see that her betrayal had consequences far beyond her own shame. I sat down at the kitchen table, pulled out my laptop, and started drafting my plan. It wasn't about revenge just for revenge's sake. No, I wanted her to see how much she'd lost, how deeply she'd betrayed me. I wanted her to feel small, to feel exposed. I was going to give her a taste of what she'd put me through. First, I decided to leak the evidence I'd gathered, not just to her family or friends. I had something more precise in mind. I created a private email account, one she wouldn't know about, and sent copies of all the incriminating messages, the hotel receipts, the photos, everything. I wanted her to wake up one day and realize her secret life was no longer hidden. I also contacted a few people I trusted, colleagues, her friends, even her boss's wife, and gave them a warning. I told them that if they wanted to keep their reputations intact, they'd better distance themselves from her. I wasn't looking to destroy lives, but I wanted her to see her world crumbling. I wanted her to feel vulnerable. Next, I set up a fake social media account, one that looked like someone from her work network. I started posting snippets of the evidence, vague but enough to create buzz. I wanted her to catch wind of it all. I knew she was probably checking her phone constantly, so I made sure she'd see it. I crafted a message that said, "Secrets always come out in the end." That one line was enough to make her worry, I hoped. By late that afternoon, I'd done everything I could think of. The house felt emptier than ever, but I knew I made a statement. I'd taken control back, not just by kicking her out, but by making her realize she couldn't hide forever. I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and anxiety. Had I gone too far? Was this enough? Or was I just getting started? Then my phone buzzed. I glanced down, a message from a number I didn't recognize. It read, "You think you're in control now, just wait." My stomach dropped. I didn't recognize the voice, but I knew it was someone who'd seen what I'd done. Someone warning me, or maybe threatening me. I clenched my fists. My mind raced. Who could it be? Was it her, her boss, or someone else? The unknown sender made my skin crawl. I knew one thing for sure: I stirred a hornet's nest, and now I was squarely in the middle of a game I didn't fully understand. I looked around the room, trying to steady myself. My mind was racing, but I refused to let fear win. If she thought she could hurt me and get away with it, she was dead wrong. My next move had to be even smarter. I had to find out who was behind that message. I had to protect myself. So I decided to dig deeper. I started tracing the source of the message, checking the IP address, the server, anything that could give me a clue. I promised myself I wouldn't back down. Not now. I'd come too far. She'd betrayed me, yes, but I'd be damned if I let some anonymous loser or her boss threaten me and get away with it. I sat in the dim light of the house, feeling the weight of everything I'd done and everything still ahead. The rage simmered beneath my skin, but I also felt a strange sense of resolve. I was going to make her regret what she'd lost. I was going to make her feel powerless like I did when I first found her secret. And I was just getting started. That night, after I spent hours tracing the source of that mysterious message, I came to a harsh realization. Whoever sent it knew exactly what I'd done. They had access to my information, and they were warning me not to get too comfortable. It was clear I wasn't dealing with an anonymous prankster. This was someone who wanted to make a statement, someone who knew the stakes. I sat back in my chair, feeling the cold sweat bead on my forehead. My hands were trembling slightly, but I clenched my fists tightly. I had to stay calm. Panicking wouldn't help. I knew I needed to get ahead of this, to figure out who was behind it, and to make sure I wasn't walking into a trap. I decided to upgrade my security, changed all passwords, enabled two-factor authentication, and unplugged my phone from Wi-Fi for a while. I didn't want her to have any leverage over me, and I certainly didn't want her or her boss to keep spying. Whoever this was, they clearly had some inside knowledge, and I wasn't about to let them control me. Meanwhile, the fallout from my leaks was starting to show. I checked social media, and sure enough, people I knew were talking, some supportive, others suspicious. Friends I once trusted started asking questions, and I could see the rumors spreading fast. Her coworkers, her friends, even some family members. It was only a matter of time before the truth went mainstream. I had to be ready for the consequences, but I also knew I couldn't just hide in fear. I had to get ahead of whatever game they were playing and turn it to my advantage. That's when I decided to take control of the narrative myself. I drafted a blunt, straightforward message and posted it publicly, anonymously. It was a warning to anyone who thought they could threaten or manipulate me. I said, "Cheating and lying have consequences. If you're watching, you've made your choice. I'm done hiding." The message was simple but clear. I wasn't backing down. Within hours, I received another message. This one was more direct. "You think you're in control? Think again." It came from a different number, but I could tell it was the same person or people behind the threats. Now, I knew I was playing a dangerous game, but I also knew that backing down now would make everything I'd done so far meaningless. I started to prepare for the worst. I contacted a lawyer to understand my rights and to make sure I was protected if things got worse. I also made sure all my evidence was backed up securely and stored in multiple locations. I was in this to win, even if I had no idea what winning would look like anymore. The most unsettling part was the constant feeling of being watched. Every time I looked at my phone, I wondered if I was about to get another warning or worse, a threat. I kept thinking about that unknown sender and what they wanted from me. Were they trying to scare me into silence? Or was this just the beginning of something bigger? One thing was clear: I'd crossed a line and they knew it. I wasn't going to go quietly. I'd refuse to be intimidated, even if it meant walking through a minefield. I had to keep my head clear, stay one step ahead, and wait for their next move. The night ended with that ominous message lingering in my mind. I knew I was in deep now, and I had no idea how far this rabbit hole went. But I also knew I couldn't just sit and wait. The more I looked, the clearer it became. The game was on, and I was determined to play it on my terms, because if I didn't stand up now, I'd lose everything I'd worked so hard for, and I refused to let her or anyone else take that away from me, not without a fight. The next morning, I woke up feeling a strange mixture of exhaustion and resolve. The chaos of the last few days had drained me physically, but emotionally I was sharper than ever. Whatever game they were playing, I was done being a pawn. I had to take a concrete step, something that would finally end this chapter once and for all. I got up, brewed a strong cup of coffee, and sat down at my desk. First, I gathered all the evidence I'd been collecting, the printed emails, the photos, the screenshots, everything. I double-checked that I'd backed everything up securely on a private drive that no one could access. Then I made a decision. I was going to file for divorce. Not just because of her betrayal, but because I needed to sever all ties. No more manipulation, no more threats. I reached for the legal papers I kept in a folder prepared months ago, just in case. I filled out the forms precisely and calmly. I knew what I had to do. I also printed a detailed account of what I'd discovered, the evidence I'd gathered, and how she'd betrayed me. I wanted the court to see the full picture, how her actions shattered our marriage. When everything was ready, I called my lawyer. We scheduled a meeting for later that day, and I handed over all the evidence. I explained everything, the messages, the hotel receipts, the photos, the threats. I told him I wanted full custody of our assets and no chance for her to twist the story. I was done playing nice. While I waited for the meeting, I stared at the empty house. The silence was deafening but also oddly peaceful. I felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken control of my life again. I knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be more fallout, more chaos, maybe even damage to my reputation. But at least I'd be free. Later that afternoon, I sat in my lawyer's office, signing the divorce papers. I handed over the keys to our house, the place she'd betrayed me in, and told her to leave her things. I made sure everything was clear, this was final. As she walked out the door, eyes red and voice trembling, I felt a strange sense of closure. No lingering doubts, no unfinished business, just a quiet, firm decision. I watched her get into her car, then close the door behind her. That's when I knew I'd won this round, not through revenge or threats, but through clarity and resolve. Walking back into my house, I took a deep breath. This was the end of one chapter and the start of something new, something I could rebuild on my own terms. I knew I'd be okay, maybe even better than before. Looking back, I realized that the betrayal taught me something essential. Trust is fragile, it can be shattered in seconds, and sometimes revenge isn't about hurting others but about reclaiming your own dignity. I stood my ground, walked away from the chaos, and refused to be a victim. So if you're ever in a situation like this, I'd say, stay calm, gather your proof, and don't let them control your life. Take your power back, even if it hurts. Because in the end, you owe it to yourself to fight for your happiness. And don't forget, sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is walk away.